I didn't even get a chance to set my bag down. Kyle stood in the doorway like a stranger answering a wrong address. His face was calm, too calm. His tone didn't crack, didn't shift. It was just words delivered like mail. "This isn't your home anymore. Please leave." Behind him, I heard the clink of glass on granite. Nicole's voice floated from the kitchen, soft and pleasant. I caught the faint smell of citrus and candle wax, something expensive, not mine. I waited thinking, maybe he'd laugh it off, say he was kidding, maybe teasing in some twisted way. But he crossed his arms and said, "You've done your part. I've got it from here." I looked at him. Not a wrinkle in his shirt. Hair-trimmed face, clean-shaven. The little boy who used to hold my hand in the parking lot was gone. This man, my son, didn't even look uncomfortable. I didn't argue. My fingers wrapped around the handle of my overnight bag, still zipped from the bus ride. I stepped back down the porch steps, the wood groaning under my weight like it didn't want me leaving either. I turned away before I could start shaking. When I reached the sidewalk, I kept walking. I passed the hedges I had trimmed every spring, the mailbox I had painted in his first year here, the tiny crack in the front window I always meant to fix. I knew this house better than he did. It still didn't belong to me. I didn't cry. Not then. My hands were too busy texting my sister, asking if she had room for one more tonight. She replied before I even reached the next corner. The next morning, I sat at her kitchen table, surrounded by old receipts, trying to find the first one that proved I'd been there from the beginning. My sister's kitchen was always too bright in the morning. Sunlight poured in from the east window, catching every scratch on the table I'd helped her refinish a decade ago. Today, that light landed on a pile of papers spread out in front of me, statements, receipts, and printouts I'd dug up from my email at 3 a.m., every rent transfer. Every grocery run when Kyle didn't have cash. Every electric bill I'd quietly paid before it got shut off. I just wanted to give him a clean start. I whispered more to myself than to my sister. Cynthia poured us coffee and said nothing at first. She'd seen enough. She'd warned me enough. Still, she waited for me to say it on my own. After Peter died, I'd sold the house, moved into a one-bedroom, and started budgeting every dollar like it was the last. Kyle had needed help. He was grieving too. Temp jobs came and went. His ex had left him with debt and a dog he couldn't keep. I told myself he'll get through it if someone believes in him. So I believed. And paid. Month after month. $1 for $50 to the landlord. Groceries when the fridge was bare. Covered his car insurance during the winters he couldn't work. I even bought him a new mattress when his back started hurting. Then he got promoted. Started dating Nicole. Got his teeth whitened and bought one of those standing desks. Now he hosted dinner parties in a house he told people was his. And I was just the shadow who used to help out. Cynthia finally spoke. "You raised him to be independent, not indifferent." I said nothing. Just reached for another receipt. Folded it once then again, like the smaller it got, the less it would hurt. It wasn't about the money. Not really. It was the silence. The part where he pretended none of it ever happened. The part where I didn't exist. I pulled one lease copy from the bottom of the pile, smoothing it flat. His name wasn't on it. Only mine. And that's when I remembered the housewarming. I had wrapped the pie in a towel to keep it warm. The flannel throw was folded neatly in the same bag he always said the couch was cold at night when the AC kicked in. It wasn't much, just something soft to say I was proud of him. When Nicole opened the door, she blinked like she hadn't expected me to show. "Oh, you came," she said. Stepping aside without smiling, I stepped into the living room and barely recognized it. The bookshelf I'd assembled with Kyle, gone. The cross-stitch I'd framed for his first apartment, the one that read, "Do small things with great love, nowhere in sight." There was a new rug glass table, tall candles in holders that didn't look like they were meant to be touched. Nothing in the room looked like him or me. Kyle came out of the kitchen, holding a bottle of wine. "There she is," he said, as if he were greeting a neighbor. He didn't hug me, just gestured to the couch like I was a guest at a hotel lounge. Dinner was small salmon and couscous, not a casserole or roast in sight. The plates didn't match. Neither did the chairs. Everything felt carefully curated, but not carefully lived in. Halfway through dessert, Kyle raised his glass. "To building a home on my own terms." The table laughed. Nicole touched his arm. I sat there smiling like I was supposed to while something tightened deep in my chest. I clapped with everyone else. I didn't trust myself to speak. After dinner, I started gathering plates. Kyle stopped me. "No need. You're a guest here now. A guest. Not mom. Not thanks. I couldn't have done it without you. Just guest." I smiled again, quietly, but I remember how my hand gripped the edge of the table for a second too long. On the way home, I left the throw on the arm of the couch. He never mentioned it again. Back at my apartment, I opened the drawer with the lease agreement. The drawer in my apartment stuck a little swollen from humidity or just age. I tugged it open slowly, careful not to jam it, and reached in for the manila folder I hadn't touched in over a year. The lease agreement was still crisp, the edges only slightly bent from handling. My name was printed clearly at the top, Clarabelle Rowan, sole tenant. I flipped through the pages, each renewal stapled in order. There wasn't a single one with Kyle's name on it. Not even as a co-signer. I had filled out the forms, made the calls, passed the background checks. I paid the deposit myself. I even covered the renter's insurance. Kyle had never qualified. His credit was a mess back then, and he didn't have a stable job. I told the landlord I would take full responsibility. And I had. I let him believe it was his place. I thought it might help him feel stable. He didn't need the paperwork to know he belonged. Or so I thought. I took the folder to Camille the next day. She was a lawyer I knew from church, sharp, discreet, and the type who remembered every detail. She whistled low as she skimmed the documents. "You're the tenant. He's a subletter, if anything. If he pushed you out, he broke contract." I said nothing. She flipped through the papers again, then looked at me. "You said he's telling people it's his house now." I nodded. "His girlfriend's parents think he bought it. They gave them a set of crystal wine glasses last Christmas for the new home." Camille leaned back in her chair. "Clarabelle, if he's misrepresenting this to others, especially people who trust him, that's not just careless. That's calculated." I didn't answer right away. I looked down at the lease again. The ink slightly faded, but the truth still printed bold. I didn't want to fight. I just wanted the facts to matter again. Camille asked me to bring copies of everything I had. I went home and opened the second drawer. I didn't hate Nicole. Truth be told, I barely knew her. She was polite enough in person, always offering me tea I never asked for, always complimenting my shoes like I wore them for her approval. But there was something too careful in her presence, like she was always checking the script. When Kyle started dating her, I noticed the changes almost immediately. His texts got shorter. He stopped calling on Sunday nights. He switched his shampoo and started folding his sweaters like they were auditioning for a catalog. He began saying things like, "I'm working on boundaries," or "We're trying to define emotional space," as if we were roommates in therapy instead of mother and son. One day, I made his favorite chicken and barley soup. I knocked on the door and let myself in like I always had. He looked surprised, annoyed even. "Mom," he said, "next time can you text before dropping by?" I stared at him, the container still warm in my hands. "I just thought you'd like some dinner." He took the soup, but he didn't say thank you. Another time when I asked about his job, he said, "I need to build a life separate from your past." That one stayed with me. My past. That was every unpaid hour I'd worked overtime so he could attend art camp. Every vacation I skipped to pay for his braces. Every late-night laundry load, every missed date, every quiet worry I never let him see. He said it like it was something shameful, something he needed to escape from. Still, I never blamed Nicole outright. Kyle made those choices. Nicole may have drawn the lines, but he picked up the chalk. He didn't expect consequences. He thought I would always make room, step back, absorb the blow and smile through it. But the truth was, I'd already started gathering everything. Bank statements, renewal notices, even the messages he sent, asking for help with the gas bill. They were all going in the envelope. The call came on a Wednesday afternoon while I was sorting laundry. Unknown number, but local area code. "Hi, is this Clarabelle Rowan?" the woman asked. "Yes. I'm calling to confirm the $3,000 transfer you scheduled this morning, just to make sure it wasn't flagged by mistake." "What transfer?" I asked, heart suddenly still. There was a pause. The woman hesitated, likely reading through a screen. "It's a wire to Avonbury Realty security deposit for the new lease at Ridgepoint Avenue. It's scheduled from your checking account ending in 62. My chest tightened. I didn't authorize that. I could almost hear her blink through the phone. Oh, well, it was scheduled using a linked account on file. It's been connected for a few years. Years ago, when Kyle first moved in, I'd helped set up a few automatic bill payments. He had access just in case of emergency. I never removed it. Never imagined I needed to. I thanked her, hung up, and stood there for a long time with my hand still on the edge of the laundry basket. $3,000. Quietly taken, quietly assumed. And it wasn't an emergency. It was entitlement. That night, I didn't call him. I didn't accuse or beg for explanation. I logged into my bank account, downloaded every statement from the last 6 years. I pulled copies of every lease agreement, every email from the landlord, every message where Kyle had thanked me for covering this one until next month. Then I sat at the kitchen table and printed it all. I found the old yellow envelope in my filing cabinet, the same kind Peter used for our taxes every April. I smoothed it flat and began filling it page by page, folding everything into a silent archive. No post-it notes, no labels, no rage, just facts, just proof. I sealed the flap and placed it in the middle of the table. And then I called Camille. I didn't want to file anything. I didn't want lawyers or courtrooms or paperwork that would follow us both for years. But when the locksmith called to confirm the new lock installation and said he couldn't finish until I personally signed off, since my name was still on the lease, I realized Kyle wasn't just drawing lines anymore. He was erasing me altogether. Camille helped me file the motion, a request to reclaim tenant rights and void any verbal permissions. Clean, civil, legal. The court date arrived fast. Faster than Kyle probably expected. He showed up in a blazer 2 sizes too small, hair gelled back like he was going to a job interview. Nicole didn't come. Maybe she thought it was beneath them. He didn't look at me as we waited. When the judge asked if we were ready to proceed, Kyle said, "I thought she was just helping out. That's all. I didn't think it was that serious." Camille stood calm as ever and handed the envelope to the bailiff. It landed on the judge's bench with a soft, decisive sound. The judge opened it. Pages rustled. Long silence. She read, then looked up. "Mr. Rowan," she said, voice even. "Did you contribute to any of these payments listed here? Rent, utilities, deposits, maintenance?" Kyle shifted in his chair. "She's my mom." The judge didn't blink. "That's not an answer." He opened his mouth, closed it, looked down. The judge continued reading aloud: email receipts, direct payments, the lease renewal with only my signature, message threads with him saying, "Thanks again, I'll pay you back soon." Year after year of me showing up. I didn't speak. I didn't need to. By the time the judge finished, Kyle's posture had collapsed into itself. The courtroom was quiet, just the sound of pages being stacked back together. The judge finally spoke. "I see no legal grounds for your removal, Ms. Rowan. You are the listed tenant." Mr. Rowan has no claim to this property beyond your permission, which you have clearly revoked. I nodded once. Outside, the air smelled sharper than I remembered. The ruling was clear. The judge said it plainly, without drama or delay. I was the legal tenant. Kyle had no right to change the locks, no standing to demand I leave, and no ownership to claim. The home was mine contractually and legally, until I chose otherwise. She added that I could recover unauthorized funds if I pursued them, that I had every right to evict him, that the court would support whatever legal action I deemed necessary. I didn't look at Kyle as we exited the courtroom. He didn't say a word. Nicole was behind him, her arms crossed, face like stone. Not ashamed, just inconvenienced. I walked right past them. At the front desk, I asked for the lease termination form. The clerk handed it over like it was any other transaction. I filled in the blanks, signed my name, and turned it in. That was it. 6 years reduced to one sheet of paper and a quiet decision. Outside, I stood in the parking lot for a moment longer than I needed to. The sun wasn't too bright. The wind wasn't too cold. But the air touched my face in a way that felt different, like it was meeting me again for the first time. I didn't cry. I didn't shake, but something shifted. Not joy, not sadness either. Just the release of weight I had carried without realizing how much it cost me to hold. I went home, packed the few personal items still in that apartment, and left the key under the mat, not for Kyle, for the landlord. There were no notes, no explanations, just the last quiet act of letting go. By the time the sun started setting, I was already driving toward something smaller, something mine. The next morning, I unpacked 3 boxes in a little one-bedroom across town, and for the first time in years, nothing had someone else's name on it. I didn't keep the house. I didn't want to. I found a small apartment on the other side of town, close enough to Camille's office that we could meet for lunch on Thursdays. The building was older, quiet, mostly retirees and young professionals who nodded politely but didn't ask questions. It only took a weekend to move in. I didn't bring much. No framed photos of Kyle, no couch he once slept on, no furniture that reminded me of who I thought we were. Instead, I unpacked the things I hadn't touched in years. My embroidery hoops, the fabric stash I kept sealed in a bin under the bed, the small framed verse I stitched when Peter was still alive. I hung it near the kitchen window. It looked like it belonged there. I replaced the curtains with ones I chose myself. Pale linen. Simple. The kind that flutter when the breeze comes in. I started volunteering twice a week at the community pantry. Nothing big, sorting canned goods, restocking shelves, greeting the morning crowd with warm coffee and small conversation. The work was quiet and honest. No one asked what brought me there. Then, one afternoon, my phone buzzed. It was Kyle. Just one message. I didn't think you'd really do it. I stared at the screen for a long time. There was no apology, no acknowledgement, just disbelief. Like I'd played a move he didn't see coming. I didn't reply. I turned the phone face down and went back to slicing bread for the afternoon line at the pantry. I wasn't angry. I wasn't even hurt anymore. I just had nothing left to explain. That night, I walked home, boiled a small pot of soup, and sat at the table with the window cracked open. The air was cool, soft. There was no one to check on me, no one to ask if I'd eaten. And for the first time in a long time, that didn't feel like a punishment. It felt like peace. The next morning, I found the envelope again. I found it tucked between an old tax return and a folder labeled insurance. I'd forgotten I'd made a second copy habit, really. Peter always made backups just in case something got lost in the mail. It was the same kind of yellow envelope. Same neat folds. Same quiet weight. I didn't open it. I held it for a moment, then placed it in a small box beneath the bed. The same box that held my will, my power of attorney forms, and a note with Camille's number written in my handwriting. I added one more note. Just a short one. Let people earn what they inherit. It wasn't bitterness. I wasn't angry anymore. I just didn't want my story rewritten by anyone else when I was no longer here to correct it. I didn't need to tell Kyle how many bills I'd covered, how many nights I'd stayed quiet so he wouldn't feel guilty. I didn't need him to know how many birthdays I spent alone, or how long it took me to stop apologizing for loving him the way I did. He'd remember some version of things. Maybe not the right one, maybe not the full one, but that wasn't mine to fix anymore. The apartment was quiet that night. A few neighbors passed in the hallway, their steps soft against the carpet. I turned off the lights, washed my cup, and drew the curtains closed. No one called. And still I slept. Not as a mother waiting for permission to rest. Not as a tenant fighting to stay, just as myself. And in that stillness, I finally learned what it meant to have peace that didn't depend on being needed.